problems and dilemmas don't go away by ignoring them and pretending they're not there. They get engaged by facing them squarely and honestly, and then learning from them, and then turning and moving in a new direction. History, despite its wrenching pain, cannot be undone, but faced with courage, need not be lived again. That's what we're doing by engaging racism. That's what we're doing by listening with new ears, speaking with new lips. That's what we're doing, I think, by having the courage to have sacred conversations about things we sometimes don't want to talk about. But sometimes, as in the Bible, when the demon is named, it loses its power, and we gain mastery over it. Sacred conversations may help the demon of racism to lose some of its power and to set the children of God free. I think while it is clearly, there are injustices, there are wrongs, racism is real, it is not what it used to be. I think we need to be very clear. Progress has been made. No one can or should deny that. And it's been made not just because of the happenstance of history, but it's been made because people of faith and goodwill, of all stripes and colors and types, have come together to change it. And so we are a better society now than we were 50 years ago. But that doesn't mean we don't have a long way to go. We have escalating levels of violence in our culture. We have disproportionate levels of poverty and minority, and disproportionate levels of poverty and crime in many communities. We've got issues that have got to be addressed, but we have made progress. And the fact that we have made progress in the past says that we can make progress in the future. We don't have to be stuck in the way things are. When I was growing up, we sort of thought about society as basically the struggle for civil rights was a struggle for equality for African Americans. That began to grow, and we began to realize, wait a minute, that it wasn't just about African Americans, but it had to do with Native Americans, that it had to do with Latino Americans, that eventually it had to do with women, it had to do with gays, we realized that what seemed like a struggle for one group actually was a struggle for all of us. That this was a human struggle writ large, but you had to start somewhere. And so I think one of the things that I've seen just in my own lifetime is that we must understand now that we must make this country and this society a better place for this group so that it will be a better place for all groups. But you have to start with somebody specific, but you don't end with the specific. Martin Luther King, toward the end of the Montgomery bus boycott, as he was reflecting back on what had happened, which had started as a bus boycott to end segregation on public transportation, at least in Montgomery, and eventually to have implications for the rest of the country. He said, and he was quoted as having said, the end of our struggle was the eradication of Jim Crow segregation. And then you can almost see him back up and say the end of our struggle was not just the eradication of Jim Crow segregation, but the end of all kinds of segregation. And then you can see him back up further. No, the end, the goal of our struggle is genuine reconciliation. You begin with the specific, but you move to the bigger. Now, you can't just jump to the bigger, but you got to begin with the reality that you're dealing with, and it will have implications for the rest of the human family, and as we're learning, the whole creation. Black lives matter, all lives matter. But this one commentator, and I don't remember who it was, said, it is of course true that all lives matter, but imagine that there are two houses next door to each other, and one is on fire and the other is not. and you call the fire department and you say, all houses matter. The point is, if one's on fire, you got to deal with that one so that the other doesn't catch on fire. I think that's what we've got going on with the Black Lives Matter. There are some issues that needed to be attended to because some of them do have some racial causes, some of them have some socioeconomic causes, but Black Lives matter, and we must declare that because all lives do matter. Because the lives of police officers matter, the lives of brown lives, I mean, all lives matter, but you got to deal with what's really in front of you. You can't ignore it and say, let's just deal with the universal until you've dealt with the particular and the specific. And so I hear the cry for Black Lives Matter as a way of saying, let's take seriously the injustices and the wrongs that are right in front of us, so that by paying attention to these lives here, we will then be able to pay attention to other lives. As I said, the civil rights movement in the 50s started out just dealing with Jim Crow segregation, and as time went on, it moved from being just civil rights to human rights, and has moved on to human decency and equality and reconciliation for all of us. But it started with something very specific. And that's what's going on with Black Lives Matter. This is the cry, I think this is the cry of our young people, a cry of so many who have been crying in silence. And now the silent scream is speaking.